you were to walk along the streets of Dublin's fair city, smiling at nothing in particular, or watching the big fat fish mulleting about the grimy and the slimy shallows of the River Liffey, a fish that only the Germans will eat, you know, or listening to what the preacher and the pigeons have to say to each other on Stephen's Green, you wouldn't be wasting your time, to my way of thinking. But if you began reading the destinations on the buses, you'd at last see one for Chapel Iseult, and there's a story in that. But there's not many now remember that Chapel Iseult is named after Iseult, the beautiful Iseult of the White Throat, who so long ago was the daughter King of Dublin. She was to be married to Mark Ap Mercian, the High King of Cornwall. And Arthur, the High King of all the Britons, the famous King Arthur, whom everyone has heard of to this day, and whose name is better than meat to those who will recite his praises. Arthur had sent Mark's own kinsman, Mark's own cousin, Tristan, across the sea to Ireland to fetch this lady to her wedding. Now, it was a sultry day when they pulled away from Dublin harbour, and the sea like a mill pond. The sails hung limp, and the rowers had the oars out and were pulling them, cursing the man profusely and quietly. Tristan and Iseult sat in the bow of the boat to catch any breath of air that might be drifting past. They played chess together. Or was it draughts or checkers? At all events, Iseult won every game, so Tristan played the harp for her. Till finally, at a loss for anything particular to say, they sent the servant down below for something to drink. But it was not the half bottle of Puy-Fuissé-style California Chablis with which he returned. America and America's wines. You know, they've got a wine in America called My Wild Irish Rosé. The only nation in the world to go from barbarism to decadence with no intervening culture. Nor yet was it the bottle of Old Perth Pink, fine Australian peppermint-flavoured fighting Burgundy. But it was the flask of love potion made by Iseult's father's chief druid to be drunk between her and Mark Ap Mercian the night of their wedding. Well, Tristan and Iseult had a couple of half joules of that. When the full horror of this dawned on them, they stared at each other aghast. How could this love be in the world at all? Tristan, being a man of obsessive honour, insisted on delivering Iseult to Mark Ap Mercian's castle gates, as agreed, and then he stalked off to assuage his grief in nightly deeds and daily deeds as well. While Iseult lay staring anorexically at the wall,
Till finally this life of servants' misspelled messages and midnight assignations proved unbearable in the days before the answering machine. And the lovers eloped together to Caledon Forest that cloaked old Scotland from Newcastle in the east to Galloway in the west, the wildest and deepest woods in all the lands of Arthur. Now messengers came to Arthur from the enraged King Mark, demanding some sort of justice. And Arthur in his beautiful fortress at Carlion and Usk consulted with his wisest advisors. For Tristan, like many a warrior of those days, was also a harper, as we have seen. And like many a harper, he was also just a wee bit of a wizard, and he had these powers that if he would put a wound on anyone, that person would die. But if anyone would wound him, that person would die. So naturally, he was not the kind of man who could be brought out of Caledon easily. So Arthur hit on a wonderful plan. He gathered together a specially highly trained guerrilla squad of poets and harpers. For these, Tristan would never harm, for he was hoping to have his book reviewed by one of them. And they went up to Caledon and they presented Arthur's case in a series of linked verses of the old Welsh verse form called the Englyn, in a language full with the repeated assonances and consonantal rhymes that the Welsh call Canhanydd and Cerdd Dant, and in a language so elusive, antiquated, and so ambiguous. There wasn't a living soul could understand a syllable of it. But they convinced Tristan and they convinced Iseult, and they agreed to come out to Caledon and abide by whatever Arthur would give as his judgment. Well, Arthur gave this as his judgment: that Iseult should spend the one part of the year with one man, when the trees were in leaf, and the other part of the year with the other, when the trees were bare, and that Merchan should get the first choice as the injured party. Mark thought long and carefully about this. Finally he thought to himself, in winter the nights are longer and the days seem longer. And he said, I choose to dwell with the beautiful Iseult when the trees are bare. Then Iseult laughed and clapped her hands, and she said, blessed be the tongue that gave that judgment. Blessed be the lips that uttered it. And blessed be the pen that recorded it. 3 trees there are, loyal and true: the holly, the ivy, and the yew, that keep their leaves all year through. So Tristan was wed to Iseult, and so the real story ends, before Wagner got his hands on it. Some say that Chapel Iseult is where she was buried years later in Dublin. A little pagan site with a little early medieval site over that, and a little Victorian site on the top of that, and at all events is underneath a building site now. All that remains of Marchat Merchan's great and mighty castle are part of the walls of a farm that is standing in Cornwall to this day. But whatever may have become of Tristan's grave,